Welcome back. Welcome back to Wednesday night Bible study, Wednesday in the Word. And that's what we're doing. Took last week off for Thanksgiving. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. It's one of my favorite holidays. A little different this year. Just Brenda and myself. We didn't see any of the grandkids. Probably will not see the grandkids during Christmas either. That's at this point our plan. It's just too much uncertainty out there right now, and we want to try to stay safe. Hopefully we get this vaccine going in a few months, and if we can hold out till then we're going to be okay again, I think. You never know what is coming up next. And that's really where we are talking about 1 Peter. That's why it is such a great letter for where we are in 2020. Now I realize that the letter that Peter writes is writing to people that is experiencing stress over their faith because of what's happening to them. You know, they're losing their jobs, they're losing family, prestige in the community. A lot of things are happening, and they're questioning their faith. And is it important? Should I go through this suffering? Should I struggle with it? And they did. We know that historically. We aren't really doing that in our time, okay? So that's where it breaks down. We're not suffering for our faith. However, when things like this, when we experience suffering in our lives, our faith suffers. Am I right? We ask questions. We get less enthusiastic about the things of God, maybe a little more suspicious, maybe a little more bitterness creeps into our lives. And faith takes a hit. And it's important for us to be real with that. You know what happens, and you know God's aware of it. You know how I know that? Right there. That's the Bible. And it's 1 Peter, and he's saying, your faith is taking a hit, isn't it? You're struggling, aren't you? Here are some words and some thoughts and reminders to turn you back, get you going in the right direction once again. And that's what Peter's been doing. I hope that you have been with us. If not, you'll notice on our web page, there is, I think it goes all the way back to June, many things. And I've kept them up there purposely for you to look at, and I hope you're taking some time, taking advantage. If you're retired in your home, what else you got to do? I mean, really, come on. So take a look at it, and I hope it will speak to you. It has spoken to me, really has, a lot. We're in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7, and we're going to cover we're going to start in verse 7, and we're going to end in verse 11. So there you go. Was that about 6 verses? So we'll take them apart, take a look at them. Peter is getting to the end of his little letter, and he's kind of wrapping things up, reiterating some ideas. It's very typical of writing of this time where as they get to the end, they get really pithy little sentence statement, not even sentences, fragments of things, and do this and don't do that, and stay away from this and be aware of that, and emphasize this, all those kinds of things. And I think they're great. These are those memory box verses that we would do well to put in our memories, and just let it be a little ammunition when we experience trials of many kinds, as he's been talking about. So let's read that first verse. Then I'm going to go boop. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and sober-minded for prayer. The end of all things is near. Therefore, be alert and sober-minded for prayer. I'm reading from the Christian Standard Bible. Maybe a little different than yours, but that's what I have. As I was reading that, you know where my mind took me? to Santa. Now, wait a minute, Larry, you're the pastor. You got to stay out of that cultural melee of things, and I understand. Well, let's face it. Santa, he's not real. Now, I hope that didn't hurt you. But he is a part of our culture, and the whole dynamic of jolly old Saint Nick and that whole thing. And you know where you learned it? You didn't learn it as an adult. You learned it as a kid. And maybe you might even recall when you found out that Santa wasn't real, and it's probably changed your life forever, hasn't it? You can't trust anyone anymore. Right? No, that's not happened. But you know, as parents, and I am one that had small children many years ago, being a small child myself, many years ago, Christmas was just, and still is, a great time of excitement, anticipation, and we as parents use that to our advantage. Oh, you better not cry, you better not pout, you better not cry. I'm telling you why Santa Claus is coming to town, right? You know what we did? And he's making a list, he's checking it twice, he's finding out who's naughty and nice. And so we as parents say, now listen here. We can only use it for a few weeks in a month. But listen here now. Don't you start crying and complaining and pouting and whining because Santa's watching. I don't know when they started this. It was probably when my kids were a little older, because I do not remember this at all, or we'd probably used it ourselves. The Elf on the Shelf, you know that one? It's this little elf. He's kind of like, he's crossed his legs and sitting up on a shelf. And then he just appears at various places, like a bedroom, your child's bedroom, kitchen table, if they're doing schoolwork at home, on the desk. Just appears out of nowhere. He's the elf on the shelf. And the elf on the shelf is making mental notes. And he will one day communicate with Santa and say yes or no about their behavior. And so he said, that elf on the shelf, he's watching. And we do that, don't we? Now here's the deadly part. Here's the deadly part. We make God Santa or an elf on the shelf. You know what I'm saying? And here's how we do it. We get thinking about end times, which there's nothing wrong with thinking about end times. We think about end times. And sometimes we use end times as a kind of incentive to live better. Well, you don't know how many years you have left. Don't know how many days Jesus may return any time. I remember as a child, vividly, we were told, I grew up in a very, very conservative independent Baptist church, and we did not believe in movies, going to movies. Thought it was a terrible thing to support Hollywood, and I'm not sure it was a bad idea, but we were not supposed to go to movies. And I remember our Sunday school or youth leader saying, what would happen if Jesus returned and found you in a theater? Now, can I be honest with you? I, with my parents' blessing, went and saw an old Western or something. Nothing. Big deal. John Wayne or something. Who knows? How the West was won. All the time I'm there, I'm saying, oh, please God, not now. Not now. Don't come back now, because I'll have to explain this all to you. And I don't want... It was a great way to make us behave. It put fear in our lives. And if you're serious about it, you don't want to get caught. The elf on the shelf. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Sometimes we use our Christian incentive that way. That's not what Peter's saying. In fact, earlier, kind of back up, chapter 1, he talks about our great salvation in chapter 1, verse 5. He says, you're being guarded by God's power through faith for a salvation that is ready to be revealed at the last time. And what is our hope? He says, you rejoice in this. Even though now for a short time it's necessary you suffer grief in various trials, so that the proven character of your faith, more valuable than gold, which though perishable is refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. He is not saying, you better be careful, you better watch out, you better not pout. I'm telling you why. Jesus Christ is coming to town. No, no, no. Oh, heavens, no. It's not a stick that God is using to threaten us by, but rather he is inviting us to consider what the greatest joy should be in our heart, and that is to be with Jesus. And if that is our greatest hope, he's saying it's on the way. Hope is on the way. In fact, in verse 13, that same chapter, he says, therefore, now get the wording here, with your minds ready for action, be sober-minded and set your hope on the grace to be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. And he goes on and says, as obedient children, don't be conformed to the desires of your former ignorance. He says, obedience doesn't come by fear that Jesus may show up and you don't want to be caught doing something bad, but rather I want to be doing something great because I am clear-minded as to who Jesus is, what he's done, and I will get to be with him. That's the joy of my life, not the fear. I better be careful. Do you understand the difference? Don't use Christianity as a carrot and stick, okay? That's not what he's talking about. All the way through, you're saying, think this through. That's why he says, back to chapter 4, verse 7, the end of all things is near. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. Therefore, what should you be? Alert and sober-minded for prayer. Alert and sober-minded. Wow. I need to be aware of the time that I am living in. And I need to be clear-headed. Folks, we are living in some of the strangest. You just turn on the news every day. You're saying, he said what? We're experiencing what? How many people have died? How many people are sick? Congress is doing what? And we're just like, it's easy to, in layman's term, to freak out, right? It's so easy to run in fear and say, oh my goodness, what's going to happen to us? How are we going to live through this? We need this person in the office. We need to get that thing fixed. We need to don't back off. Be sober-minded. Be alert and pray. Do you understand what he's saying? You see, and I remember he's talking to people who are experiencing trials of many kinds because of their faith. And he's saying, be alert. God is going to bring this to an end, and it may be soon, it may not be soon, but he's going to bring it to an end. He's going to blow the whistle. He's going to say, that's it. Time is finished. We're in the 2-minute warning right now. But one day, the whistle will blow and say, game's over. And so you pray. What do you pray? God, give me this and do this and fix that and go that. No. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't misunderstand me. But the prayer is not a wish list. If you fix these things, then I will have happiness in my life. No. The prayer is, I get in touch with you, God, and I'm trusting in your wisdom, and I'm trusting in your love, and I'm trusting in your power, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to live with a joyful attitude because I know that my Father is alive and that Jesus is alive and standing before me. I want to stand with him. I can start preaching here if I'm not careful. Do you live with the anticipation that the end of all things is near? See, at my age, I'm past 65 now. I'm wondering, how am I going to survive? What am I going to do? How am I going to do this thing? And it comes to me. You know, God's in charge, and one of these days, Larry will be a memory, hopefully an okay memory, but it'll be a memory here, but he'll be a reality there. And that brings peace to my life. It brings joy to my life. It brings hope to my life. Don't freak out. Be aware that the end of all things is near. Who's bringing it to an end? God himself. Why? Because he wants to, because he knows his time, because his timing will be impeccable, be perfect, wonderful, just right. Can you trust him? Well, sober-minded says, another translation is, don't lose your head. Don't lose your head. I have heard stories, true stories. I've never done it myself. My grandparents were farmers, but I never saw it. My dad would tell me. But if you're gonna have a chicken for lunch, nothing fresher like going out and cutting a head off a chicken, right? And plucking the feathers out and putting that bird in. That's good eating. Unless you're the chicken. Then it's kind of sad. But I have heard it from more than one person say that this is honest, this is actually true, that if you put that chicken up on a chopping block and you chop their head off and put them down, they'll run around the place for a little bit of time, running like a chicken with its head cut off. Right? And it really is. I mean, they'll run and they'll hit themselves and then finally, obviously, they'll fall over because they are dead. It's just their body it's not connected with their brain for some reason. It's just, and they're going, well, they're not doing that because they don't have a head, do they? So they're just running around till they fall over. And we have that phrase, run around like a chicken with his head cut off. Don't know where we're going, why we're going, how we're going, and we're not getting anywhere. Don't be a chicken with your head cut off. Be alert, be sober-minded, pray. Don't freak out. Don't lose your head. All right, let's go on. Above all, maintain constant love or fervent love for one another, since love covers a multitude of sins. Now, Peter has been very specific about how we are to be with other believers. Why is that important? For there's two reasons. One, this is the community of Christ. This is the body of Christ. And the way you treat the body, you're treating yourself. You wouldn't step on your own toe just because it's hurting a little bit, would you? No. You take care of that toe. He says, make sure that you take care of the body. But the second thing is, you're doing it because the community, the body of Christ, is the greatest evidence of who Jesus Christ is to an unbelieving world. Absolutely. And he doesn't say just love when you're being loved, love when you feel good about it, love when you're in the Christmas season and we all got love, joy, peace, kindness. And no. He's saying, he gives it an adjectives. And the translation I have is constant, fervent is another translation. Constant love doesn't end. It's not based upon what's happening others towards you. You have a love for others. And then he says something, it's right out of Proverbs. It says, love covers a multitude of sins. Does that mean it excuses sins? That's not what it means. What, in the context, what it means is that if you have love and someone does something against you, it is easier for you to forgive them and work through that wrong attitude and wrong action so much easier than if you stand back and wait until they get their act together. See, love covers those sins and makes it possible for that fabric to be put back together again. See, our love for others should not be dependent on the quality of their love for you. That's why Jesus says, love your enemies. There's no quality of love there that's being reciprocated to you, but it is incumbent upon you to love them. That's the constant love. And love wears down. Love wears down people in situations much, much, much more effectively than anger and bitterness. What does anger and bitterness do? It builds walls. Love tears them down. And so he continues on. He says, be hospitable to one another without complaining. Now, very specific in this time period, but I think for our time as well. In that time period, hospitality was very, very important. The way that you interacted with strangers as they came to your door, especially in the church. Traveling evangelists, there were many of them. And they would come and say, I'm a traveling evangelist. Could I spend time with you? Apparently, the culture of that time was what was called an honor and shame culture. Honor and shame. In a traditional culture, you might see it in Eastern religions, Eastern communities, where, you remember, back World War II, the kamikazes and the suicides, what's that called? Harikari, where they would kill themselves when instead of being caught, they would kill themselves. It was an honor and shame. They were very, very, we're the best, we're the best, we're the best. And here's what we do, and here's how we maintain our goodness and our bestness. But if they are shamed, then they take their own lives. I mean, it's a very rough kind of culture. We don't see that in America. We are in an individualistic, my good is the most important thing kind of culture. But in this day and time, when Peter's writing, it isn't a shame, honor culture. And so if someone came to your door and knocked on your door and said, I need help, it would be a shame to the community to turn them away just out of hand. It would be an honor for you to try to help them. But there was also, interesting, there was a book that almost made it in the New Testament called the Didache. It means teaching. It was written towards the end of the first century, maybe in the beginning of the second century. And it went around to many of the churches, and it was just a practical kind of a handbook on how to do church. And one of the things in there, it says, if someone comes and says, I am a minister and I would like to spend the night in your house, it says you bring them in, you feed them. But if he spends 3 days there, he's a phony. Let him out. If he wants to work with you, great. Help, give him a job, let him work, and he can work and stay there. But there are others who are going to take advantage of that. So they even mentioned that. So he's saying, I want you to be hospitable without complaining. My mother, God bless her, was the best at hospitality. I cannot tell you how many traveling missionaries and evangelists and people who would come for a conference at our church and spent days or a week in our house, and they were treated like kings. And if it was a husband and wife, it was king and queen. Mom just went overboard, and there was never a complaint. That's the honest truth. It wasn't like, well, I got to do this because they're expecting me to do this. No. This was her gift. It was the gift of hospitality, and she did it well. She really did. And he continues on in verse 10. Just as each one has received a gift, use it to serve others as good stewards of the varied grace of God. If anyone speaks, let it be as one who speaks God's word. If anyone serves, let it be from the strength that God provides. Let me just stop there. What he's saying is something that Paul goes into more detail, and that is that everyone has spiritual gifts. And the gifts are given not to amplify you as a great person, but rather to serve others. The only reason that you're given gifts is to help other people. And he goes in just a couple of them. He said, if you speak, see, that's me, and that's other people, Sunday school teachers, and other kinds of opportunities to speak. Jim, great preacher, and God's gifted him in a great way. And he loves to share what he's doing. And we're going to get him to preach again in the first of the year, because this is God's gift, and it's no good unless it's being used, right? It's important. And it's not to lift up others, but it is not to lift up yourself. It is to lift up others. So if you've got a gift of speaking, or if you've got a gift of serving, there's two major distinctions: gift of speaking and teaching, and the gift of serving. You can put all kinds of various spiritual gifts under those two big headings. And he's saying, if you do it from the strength that God provides. God is the one who has given the gift, and he's given it for the benefit of you doing it for others, because it's from him. What does God do? For God so loved the world that he gave. That was good. I heard that. That he gave. See, the impulse was out of the character of God, and the character of God is the love of God. And when the love of God is evident, it always manifests in giving. God says, hey, you are not my children. You're my kids. We're related. You have the same spiritual DNA living inside of you. It's called the Holy Spirit. And he is changing your life, and he's gifted you with several gifts. It's important for you to understand what they are, but it's even more important to understand where they came from, and then it's really important to know what they're valued for, and that is to give that gift to others. So critically important. Then he closes this up. So that, all right, you got the gifts, you're giving them unstintingly, unselfishly, not lifting yourself up, but lifting others up. So that, in order that, the purpose being that God may be glorified through Jesus Christ in everything. Do you get that? Do you believe that? Is that the impulse of your life? That God would be glorified through Jesus Christ in everything. Who are you? Now just stop there. Who are you? You're God's children. How are you God's children? Through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. Do you understand that salvation, that in salvation, when Paul said, I'm crucified in Christ, nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life that I live now, I live in by the faith of Jesus Christ, who loved me and gave himself for me. What he's saying is everything about me is not about me. Everything about me is not about me. Everything about me should be about Jesus Christ, Him crucified, His life living in me, the expression of Jesus Christ being in me. And if the life of Jesus Christ is being expressed in my life, then what I'm doing is I'm giving glory to God. I'm amplifying. I am making Him famous in my life. I read that the other day. That giving glory to Jesus is making Him famous. You know, making Him famous makes me less famous. That's what it should. Because I want Him to receive the glory, not me. And here he says, all of this is accomplished through the Holy Spirit living in you, giving you spiritual gifts, so that God will be honored in Jesus Christ, because Jesus Christ is alive in you. You are bought with the price of Jesus Christ, and the life of Christ is living in you. One day we shall be like Him, for we shall behold Him. And even now we're being made into the image of Jesus Christ. We're being shaped and molded in these trials and these difficulties and these struggles and these spiritual gifts. The positives and the negatives are moving in our lives to make us more and more like Jesus Christ. And when we're more and more like Jesus Christ, He is glorified. He is made famous. He is honored. And then he ends with a doxology. To Him, and I think he's referring to Jesus Christ, to Him be the glory and the power forever and ever. Amen. Here's my challenge, one challenge today, and we'll end. Start your day off with these words. Today, I want you to get the glory and the power forever and ever. And then end your day tomorrow with a question. Did I give Him the glory and the power all day long? Was He amplified? Was He made famous? Was He glorified in my thoughts, in my actions, in my words, in my deeds, in my opportunities to serve? Was He glorified in my attitudes, in my thoughts? See, it's not just a nice little, to Him be glory and power forever and ever, amen. Say, amen, that's good. But did it happen? It's not words, folks. It's not words. It is. Either it was a reality or it was missing. What was it? So there's my challenge. A little application there. Don't let God be an elf on the shelf, all right? One of these days. You see, that was the problem, wasn't it, with our kids, is that we could only use that kind of modified behavior for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then Christmas was over and they were back the way they were, fighting and scraping and screaming and giving you fits. And we are to be sober-minded, because we are to be thinking about what is waiting for us, and how God has provided that for us, and how this is a blip in eternity that is yet to come, yet to be revealed. And that thought motivates us, not just, oh, I want to talk about this and that'll make me happy. No, I want to think about what God has prepared for me constantly, so I can have a fervent love, so I can have a clear and sober mind, and be in prayer and be changed by what is yet to come. We're living in I've mentioned to you before, the already and not yet. Already we have the presence of God, but it's not complete. That's the not yet. We're in that 2-minute warning. Wouldn't it be great? Hey, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal with you. If Jesus returns before you see this, we'll look at it together in heaven. Okay? All right. Thanks so much for watching and studying with me. It's my joy to do that. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.